I'm proud to announce that Food for the Archons is now live. It's available on Amazon.com or through sixsensemedia.net/Archons. You can get it on Kindle, or you can get yourself a paperback. Hi, Truth Seekers. Dennis Nappy II. I'm going to share with you an excerpt from Chapter 1 called Communication that I read the other day on my podcast. I'm going to let you listen to it here so you can get a preview of what the book's about. And in this section, in this beginning, I'm exploring the possibility, is psychic communication possible? If psychic communication is possible, it indicates transference of data. Does that also indicate that something like energy parasitism or psychic vampirism is a real event? And I go into detail on that and experience that I had in the intro to this book. I hope you enjoy it. Check it out, sixsensemedia.net/Archons. I am human, food for the Archons. Humanities, psychic connection, simulated realities, parallel worlds, and the manipulation of mankind. Enjoy. My work here, my project. This is... I don't even know the word to describe it. This is what I'm leaving behind. And I'm not going anywhere right now, but I encountered something that terrified me. I encountered something that went against what was supposed to be real. I encountered something that, to me, I identified a situation that we're in that is not good. It was a helpless and hopeless situation, and there's a difference. Helpless is, I can't do this on my own. Hopeless is, there's no way anything can help me get out of this. And that's where I was as I watched my father die. And that's a helpless and hopeless situation as it is. But as he was dying, I had experiences that were supernatural and paranormal that I thought was crazy. And after he died and I went through that process and we said goodbye and I not only looked at the corruption of the cancer industry, that was a whole other issue that I was dealing with. I then had to deal with, okay, I got these impressions and these intuitive downloads that basically there were energy parasites that were sucking our energy because we were so sad and scared for my father as he suffered horribly. I had to then ask myself, research, determine, go and learn. Number one, is it possible for somebody to receive data or information psychically? Is that something real, or are these people with overactive imaginations? Now, I've had psychic experiences my whole life, but I never fully researched it. And now I'm glaring at what I think is the greatest secret ever kept from mankind. I'm glaring at a glimpse of that. I was given a glimpse of that, and I had to, number one, I had to learn, is it possible for us to receive psychic data? The next thing I had to learn was, is it possible that there's an entity that feeds off of human energy? Is that possible as well? And I found it. And it's real. And I spent 55,000 words explaining it in a way that is, I think, easy to read and understand and follow. Anybody can pick this up and track it. So that's where I was at the beginning of this journey. But my journey started before my father got sick. And I want to share a part of that journey. So I'm going to read Chapter 1 in Part 1 of I Am Human, Food for the Archons. Humanities, psychic connection, simulated realities, parallel worlds, and the manipulation of mankind. Part 1. The Sixth Sense. In the country of Gadarenes, after Jesus freed a man from his possession by unclean spirits, Jairus, one of the rulers of the synagogue, approached him. Jairus fell to Jesus' feet and begged him to save his daughter, who was close to death. Jesus agreed, and he made his way through the town. A crowd followed behind him. Within that crowd was a sick woman. For 12 years she suffered from a blood condition, and despite visiting many physicians and after spending all of her money, she could not be cured. As Jesus walked through the town, She joined the crowd and pressed in behind him. The woman reached out and touched his clothes, believing that touching him would heal her sickness, and in doing so the plague dried up from her blood, and she was made well. As this happened, Jesus felt his virtue flowing from him, turned around and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" Mark 5:25-30. How did he know? What did Jesus experience that allowed him to recognize someone siphoning his healing energy? Furthermore, how did the sick woman know that touching Jesus would heal her? What exactly was the virtue that she took from Jesus? Communication. On a particularly hot day in July of 2009, I found myself escaping to the cool air of my local bookstore. I was searching for my next reading adventure, hopeful that I would find some answers to the incessant question that continually plagued my thoughts. I wandered curiously down aisle after aisle, searching the occult, spiritual, and religious sections while visualizing my intuition leading me to that glowing book with all the answers I had ever hoped to find. To my disappointment, the magic book of answers never manifested, and I found myself staring at the same rows of muted books as I looped through the same 3 aisles. On one of my passes, I noticed a man, probably in his early 30s, standing at the end of one of the rows. He was dressed appropriately for the weather and area, and didn't seem out of place in the least. Everything about this man's physical appearance seemed normal. However, as I approached him, I felt a growing discomfort press at the base of my neck. It was a deep pressure that alerted me as if something dangerous was pursuing me. As I walked closer to this man, the pressure grew in intensity. I passed him and walked quickly to another aisle. I gave myself a moment to explore the feelings I was experiencing and realized I had a sense that this casual-looking man was following me. Furthermore, I sensed he somehow knew I had detected his presence. A few moments later, he came around the aisle and walked toward me, just as I had expected him to. He passed uncomfortably close behind me, almost touching me, undoubtedly violating my personal space and causing my anxiety to spike. As he passed, the pressure at the base of my neck increased in intensity, and I then felt what can best be described as a draining of my energy. It seemed to be flowing out of me in his direction as he passed, as if someone had opened a valve and allowed it to drain freely. I immediately glared at him, making eye contact briefly before I rushed out of the store to the safety of my vehicle. Once there, the draining sensation stopped, and the pressure at the base of my neck subsided. As I got in my car and drove toward home, the words "psychic vampire" floated through my mind. I had previously read an article that talked about these people who have an ability to psychically drain energy from their victims. But were they actually real? Had I really encountered one? The realness of the interaction was difficult for me to deny, yet I had still tried to attribute what I had experienced to an overactive imagination. I am aware that the mind can sometimes trick the body into feeling various sensations, but in this instance, the sensations I had were not in any way preceded by thoughts of psychic vampirism or anything similar. Everything was spontaneous. Over the years, I have learned to interpret my intuitive perceptions by judging them based on the immediate feelings I get prior to my conscious mind's contamination. In this instance, my perception of him attempting to drain me was raw and untainted by my damaging conscious thoughts. But had this encounter really happened? Was this casual-looking man in the bookstore actually trying to siphon my energy? In analyzing this brief encounter, a few observations came to mind. Assuming this was a real event, I perceived the following. I felt his intent. It was a pressure at the back of my neck as if my fight or flight reaction was being stimulated and giving me a sense of being pursued. If an energy exchange was in fact pending, then this sensation was a possible indicator that it was happening. Was I feeling his presence or simply detecting the drain on my own energy? The next thing I observed about the encounter was my clear perception that he was aware that I knew what he was doing. If my perception was accurate, does this indicate a level of two-way communication between us? If this is true, then this is how our conversation went. Him: I'm going to take your energy. Me: hey, I can hear you, and I'm not going to let you. Him: I'm going to try to do it anyway. Me: fuck you, I'm leaving. Although not a single audible word was uttered between us, this was the unspoken conversation that I perceived. The fact that I sensed he was going to follow me, and then moments later he walked uncomfortably close to me, lends, in my opinion, some validation to what I was experiencing. If I'm correct in my assumptions, then we have to wonder not only if human beings are capable of sending and receiving energy, but also if that energy is encoded with information. If that energy is encoded, are we able to process and interpret that encoded data? Lastly, if we can receive and transmit data encoded energy, can we also steal the energy of another, or send some misleading information? 30 years ago, had we told people we would someday be able to stream video, images, text, and so much more into a small device that fits into our hands, the average person would have rolled their eyes and told us we watched too much Star Trek. Today, we enjoy instant communication through the wireless internet, a system that takes data and transmits it invisibly through the air to a device that is able to receive, interpret, and respond to such data. A mobile device, however, is much different than a living, breathing human being. Or is it? Do humans possess a mechanism by which to transmit and receive data? Surely, people with documented psychic abilities must have a mechanism that allows them to access the desired information. If this is the case, do we have evidence of it? Such a concept was clearly discussed in Mark 5, as the woman intended to siphon Jesus' energy. When she did, Jesus knew. Much like when this man seemingly drained me of my energy, I also knew. This observation is by no means meant to compare me to Jesus. It does suggest, however, that humans may be capable of energetic transference and communication. There you have it, my friends. I hope your attention is captured with that, and I'm just going to read the dedication in my book here, and a quote that I've spoken about before. For you, Dad, I will never give up. I will never forget. This is not over, and somehow, some way I will find an answer, in this life or the next. We, those whom you see here, are then the avengers of the torments and suffering of our fathers. And that's a quote from the Mayan Popol Vuh, their creation myth. All right, Truth Seekers, thanks for listening. That was Chapter 1, and that's just beginning. I promise you that rabbit hole goes so much deeper, starting off in the very next chapter of the book. I hope you enjoy it. You can find it at Amazon.com and at sixsensemedia.net/Archons. I am human, food for the Archons, humanity's psychic connections, parallel worlds, simulated realities, and the manipulation of mankind. I'm Dennis Nappy II. Thanks for watching.